The miracle: Jesus's closest friend Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. His body has begun to decay. Everyone is weeping. And Jesus, the Son of God, weeps too. Then he walks to the tomb and speaks 2 words, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man walks out. This is one of the greatest miracles Jesus ever performed. Because this time, the dead man isn't a stranger. He is Jesus's dearest friend. And this time, death isn't fresh. 4 days have passed. The body has begun to rot. Everyone has said it's too late. And Jesus shows them that too late is a phrase that has no power when the author of life opens his mouth. A man stood before a tomb. Tears were rolling down his face. Everyone around him was weeping, but his weeping was different. Because this man was not an ordinary man. This man had raised the dead, opened the eyes of the blind, silenced storms with a single word. This man was the Son of God. And he was crying. Why does a man who holds all power weep at a grave? Why does he shed tears when he knows that in less than 2 minutes, he will call his friend back from the dead because he loved him? And because love doesn't calculate. Love doesn't say it'll be fine in 2 minutes, no need to cry. Love sees the people it cherishes in agony and it bleeds with them. This is the story of the night love declared war on death. And won. The raising of Lazarus. Come out. Bethany. A small village half an hour's walk from Jerusalem. Tucked behind the slope of the Mount of Olives, reached by a dusty path that wound through fig trees and limestone rock. Stone houses, narrow lanes, the smell of bread baking in clay ovens. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Where doors were never locked. Where a neighbor's grief was the whole village's grief. And in this village, there was a house that Jesus called home. Not Nazareth. Not Capernaum. Not the temple courts. When Jesus came to Jerusalem for Passover, for festivals, for the final showdown that awaited him, he stayed here. In this house. At this table. With these people. Lazarus and his 2 sisters Martha and Mary. I need you to understand this family. Jesus had thousands of followers. He had 12 disciples. He had an inner circle of 3: Peter, James, and John. But Lazarus, Martha, and Mary were something different. They were not students. They were not followers. They were friends. The Gospel of John, when speaking of Lazarus, uses a phrase that appears nowhere else, the one Jesus loved. Loved. A specific, personal, tender word. Among the multitudes, among the 12, among the thousands who pressed in to hear and touch and follow, this man held a special place in the heart of God's Son. Martha was the doer. The one who cooked, cleaned, organized, served. When Jesus came for dinner, Martha was in the kitchen making sure the bread was warm and the wine was poured and everything was perfect. She expressed love through action, through feeding, through preparing, through making sure the people she cared about were comfortable. Mary was the listener. The one who sat at Jesus's feet while Martha worked. The one who poured expensive perfume on his feet and wiped them with her hair. She expressed love through presence, through being still, through absorbing every word, through a devotion so deep it made other people uncomfortable. And Lazarus was the companion. The one who walked with Jesus through the olive groves, who sat with him under the stars, who talked and laughed and shared the kind of silence that only exists between people who know each other completely. This was the family. And Lazarus was dying. The illness came fast. Maybe a fever. Maybe an infection. Maybe something that had no name in that era. But it came hard and it came heavy. Lazarus collapsed. His skin burned. His breathing thinned. His eyes lost their focus. Martha and Mary did what they could. Cool cloths on his forehead. Broth he couldn't swallow. Prayers whispered over his shaking body. But every hour he worsened. Every hour the shadow deepened. Every hour the sisters looked at each other and saw their own terror reflected back. They made a decision. They sent a message to Jesus. He was across the Jordan River, at least a full day's journey away. The message they sent was short. Devastatingly short. 5 words that contained an ocean: Lord, the one you love is sick. The one you love. They didn't even write Lazarus's name. They didn't need to. The one you love, Jesus would know. And in those words was both information and desperate plea: come. Please come. Because the person you love most in this village is slipping away. The messenger ran. Through the dust, through the heat, across the river. He found Jesus. He delivered the message. And Jesus didn't come. He waited 2 days. 2 days. John records this with brutal clarity. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. Read that sentence again. The one he loved was dying. The sisters were begging. And he stayed where he was. 2 more days. What was he doing for 2 days? Teaching, healing strangers, sleeping? We don't know. John doesn't say. He just says Jesus stayed. When he received the message, Jesus said something strange: this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. This sickness will not end in death. But Lazarus died. Probably before the messenger even reached Jesus. While the sisters were watching the door, waiting for that familiar figure to appear on the road, their brother's chest rose one last time, fell, and did not rise again. His eyes stared at nothing. Martha reached over and closed them. Mary collapsed onto his chest, clutching fistfuls of his garment, screaming his name into the hollow silence of a body that would never answer. And Jesus did not come. They waited, through the washing of the body, through the anointing with spices, myrrh and aloes, packed around the limbs, layered into the folds of linen, through the wrapping strips of cloth wound tied around the arms, the legs, the torso, the face, through the procession to the tomb, friends and neighbors carrying the body on a flat stretcher through the narrow lanes, women wailing, flute players filling the air with sorrow. They waited through the rolling of the stone. That heavy, grinding, final sound, rock against earth, sealing the entrance. Sealing Lazarus inside. Sealing every hope into darkness. And Jesus did not come. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then 3. Then 4. 4 days. This number is critical. In Jewish belief of the time, the soul lingered near the body for 3 days after death. On the 4th day, the soul departed completely. There was no coming back. The 4th day was death's absolute, irreversible, non-negotiable victory. And there was something else. In the heat of the Judean climate, by the fourth day, decomposition was well advanced. Even packed in spices, the body would be swelling, discoloring, breaking down at the cellular level. The smell would be seeping through the stone, through the cracks, into the open air. The sweet, suffocating, unmistakable smell of decay. 4 days. Every rabbi in the land would tell you the same thing. Every doctor, every mourner, every human being who had ever lost someone and stood before a sealed tomb. It's over. It's been over. There is no coming back from 4 days. And it was at exactly this point, the point of maximum impossibility, the point where every rational mind says too late, the point where hope doesn't just die but decomposes, that Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." As Jesus approached Bethany, word reached the village. He's coming. Martha heard it. And Martha, practical, direct, unable to sit still with her emotions, always needing to do something, ran. She didn't wait for Mary. She didn't change her mourning clothes. She ran out of the village, up the road, toward him. And when she saw him dusty from the road, calm, unhurried, 4 days too late, she stopped. She was breathing hard. Her face was raw from crying. Her eyes were swollen nearly shut. And she said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Hear this sentence. If you had been here. But you weren't. We sent for you. We begged. We watched the road. Every sound of footsteps, every shadow on the path is that him, is he coming, and you didn't come. My brother would not have died. Because you heal strangers. You open blind eyes. You stop funerals for people you've never met. But my brother, my Lazarus, 4 days in a tomb. Where were you in this sentence? There is faith and fury. Love and accusation. Trust and betrayal. I believe in you and I am shattered by you. And then, because Martha was Martha, she added something remarkable. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Even now. After 4 days. After the tomb. After the decay. After every reason to stop believing. Even now. This is staggering faith. This is faith standing in a graveyard, surrounded by the smell of death, with tears still wet on her face, and saying, "But you are still God. And I still believe." Jesus looked at her and said, "Your brother will rise again." Martha's answer was tired. Automatic. The kind of thing you say at funerals because someone taught you to say it. I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. The last day. Someday. Far off. Abstract. A theological concept filed under future hope. She believed it, but it didn't help. Not now. Not standing here with an empty house and a sealed tomb and 4 days of unanswered prayers. And Jesus said something that split history in two. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? I am the resurrection. Not I will perform a resurrection. Not I know about resurrection. Not I will send a resurrection. I am. The resurrection is not a doctrine. It's not a day on the calendar. It's not a theological concept. It's a person. And that person is standing in front of you. Right now. On this road. With dust on his sandals and tears he hasn't shed yet. Martha looked at him. And for the first time in 4 days, something shifted behind her eyes. Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Martha went back. She found Mary. She whispered, "The teacher is here. He's asking for you." Mary rose. Quickly. The mourners who had come from Jerusalem, friends, neighbors, professional grievers, followed her. She's going to the tomb to weep, they assumed. But Mary wasn't going to the tomb. She was going to Jesus. And when she saw him, Mary didn't do what Martha did. Martha had stood her ground, looked him in the face, spoken her piece. Mary couldn't. Her legs failed. She crumpled. She fell at his feet, the same feet she had once anointed with perfume, the same feet she had sat beside to listen for hours, and she wept. The same words as her sister, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." The same words. But a different voice. Martha's version had steel in it, accusation, challenge, strength. Mary's version had nothing in it but devastation. The raw, unprotected sound of a heart that has been hollowed out by grief. And Jesus saw Mary weeping. He saw the Jews who had come with her weeping. He saw the village consumed by sorrow. He felt the weight of it, the collective, crushing, suffocating weight of human grief. And then John wrote the shortest verse in the Bible. 2 words that contain an ocean: Jesus wept. Ed Ackerson. He shed tears. The Son of God wept. He wept knowing he would raise Lazarus. He wept knowing the miracle was minutes away. He wept knowing that death was temporary and that he held the power of resurrection in his voice. Why? Because love does not reason. Love does not calculate. Love does not say the solution is coming, so the pain doesn't count. Love enters the pain. Love sits down in the ashes. Love looks at the people it cherishes, and when they weep it weeps. Jesus wept because Mary was shattered. Jesus wept because Martha was broken. Jesus wept because death was tearing apart the people he loved and the world he had made. But John tells us something else. Something most people miss. The Greek says Jesus was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. The word embramaume doesn't just mean sadness. It means anger, indignation, a fury that rises from the gut. Jesus was angry. Not at the sisters. Not at the mourners. Not at Lazarus for dying. At death itself. He was angry that death existed. Angry that it tore families apart. Angry that it turned homes into tombs and laughter into wailing and living men into decaying corpses wrapped in linen. He was angry at the wrongness of it, the cosmic, fundamental, unacceptable wrongness of death. And that anger was fuel. Because Jesus was not going to stand at this tomb and grieve quietly and go home. He was going to war. Where have you laid him? Come and see, Lord. They led him to the tomb. A cave cut into limestone rock. A large, flat stone across the entrance. The smell of decay already leaking through the cracks, mixing with the evening air. Jesus stood before it. The crowd gathered behind him. Dozens of people. Maybe 100. Mourners, curious neighbors, skeptics, believers. All watching. All waiting. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Silence. Then Martha's voice, sharp, panicked, "Lord, by this time there is a bad odor. It has been 4 days." She wasn't being disrespectful. She was being honest. She was protecting him and herself from the horror behind that stone. 4 days in a tomb. The body would be unrecognizable. The smell would be overwhelming. Whatever dignity Lazarus had left would be destroyed the moment that stone moved. Don't open it. Let us remember him as he was. Let the stone stay. Let the dead rest. And Jesus looked at her. Not with frustration. Not with impatience. With the steady, unshakable certainty of someone who knows exactly what is about to happen. Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? If you believe. Seeing requires believing first. Not the other way around. While the stone is still sealed. While the smell still seeps through. While every piece of evidence says impossible. Believe. Martha nodded. Or maybe she didn't nod. Maybe she just didn't say no. Maybe she just stepped back and let it happen because she had run out of arguments and all she had left was a thin, trembling, barely there thread of faith. And that was enough. Men stepped forward. They gripped the stone. They pushed. It resisted, heavy, settled, sealed by its own weight and the earth around it. They pushed harder. Slowly, grinding, scraping against the rock floor, the stone began to move. Inch by inch. And as it moved, the smell hit. It came in waves. Sweet and rotten and thick, coating the inside of your throat, filling your nostrils, making your eyes water and your stomach clench. The smell of flesh that had crossed the line from life to chemistry. The smell of a body returning to dust. People gagged. People turned away. People covered their faces with their mantles. Some stumbled backward. A woman near the front began to retch. But they kept pushing. And the stone moved. And the mouth of the tomb opened. Darkness. Not the gentle darkness of evening. The absolute, dense, sealed darkness of a space that had not seen light in 4 days. A darkness that seemed to push back against the daylight, as if it didn't want to be disturbed. As if something inside it was fighting to stay closed. The smell poured out now. Unfiltered. The full force of 4 days of decomposition in a sealed limestone chamber. Several people broke from the crowd and walked away. They couldn't take it. The living don't belong this close to the dead. But Jesus stepped forward. Toward the darkness. Toward the smell. Toward the open mouth of a tomb that held the decomposing body of his best friend. He stopped at the entrance. He did not go in. He didn't need to. He looked up. Toward the sky. Toward a Father that no one else could see. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. This prayer was not a request. It was a receipt. he was thanking God for something that hadn't happened yet as if it had already happened. Because in the economy of God, when the Father and Son agree it's already done. The miracle was settled before the words were spoken. The outcome was certain before the command was given. And then, Jesus lowered his eyes from the sky. He fixed them on the darkness. And every person in that crowd felt it a shift. In the air. In the ground beneath their feet. In the fabric of reality itself. Something was gathering. Something was building. Like the pressure before a thunderstorm. Like the silence before an earthquake. Like the stillness before the first day of creation, when God opened his mouth and the universe began. Jesus drew breath. And the breath of the man who had breathed life into Adam, who had spoken light into darkness, who had called the stars by name and set the oceans in their boundaries, that breath filled his lungs. And he cried out. Not spoke. Not said. Not whispered. Cried out. A voice like thunder wrapped in authority. A voice that was not asking. Not requesting. Not hoping. Commanding, the voice of the one through whom all things were made, directed at the one thing that dared to take what belonged to him. Lazarus, come out. The sound hit the stone walls of the tomb and ricocheted into the darkness. It hit the linen wrappings. It hit the cold skin. It hit the motionless chest. It hit the silent heart. And it went deeper. Past the flesh. Past the bone. Past the biology. It went to the place where Lazarus was. Wherever the dead go. Whatever realm held him. Whatever darkness had swallowed his consciousness 4 days ago, the voice reached there. Because this voice had no boundaries. This voice had created boundaries. The walls between life and death, between here and there, between the breathing and the breathless, this voice had built those walls. And this voice could walk through them. Lazarus. His name. Spoken by the voice that had spoken his name before he was born. The voice that had woven him in his mother's womb. The voice that knew every hair on his head, every beat his heart had ever made, every breath he had ever drawn. Come out. Not please. Not if it be your will. Come out. An imperative. A decree. A king's command that does not ask for permission and does not wait for compliance. Come. Out. Silence. Total. Crushing. Absolute. No one breathed. No one moved. 100 people stood frozen, staring at the black rectangle of the tomb's mouth. The smell was still there. The darkness was still there. Nothing had changed. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. A bird called somewhere. A breeze moved through the olive trees. A child whimpered and was hushed. 4 seconds. 5. Someone in the back of the crowd shifted. Someone whispered. The moment was stretching too long. Doubt was creeping in at the edges. Maybe nothing was going to. A sound. From inside the tomb. Faint. Almost inaudible. A dry, rustling sound. Like fabric shifting against stone. Everyone stiffened. Then another sound. A scraping. Something moving on the stone floor. Something dragging. Something that had been still for 4 days and was now impossibly, undeniably moving. And then a breath. Not a sigh. Not a whisper. A breath. A gasping, ragged, violent inhalation. The sound of lungs that had been empty and collapsed and dead for 4 days suddenly filling with air. Like a drowning man breaking the surface. Like a newborn's first cry. The most primal, most fundamental, most miraculous sound in the universe, the sound of life returning. A collective gasp from the crowd. Someone screamed. Someone fell. Someone grabbed the person next to them and squeezed so hard it hurt. And then movement in the darkness. A shape. White. Wrapped in linen. Emerging from the black void of the tomb the way dawn emerges from night slowly, then all at once. He was upright. Standing. Standing. A body that had been horizontal on a stone slab for 4 days was now vertical. The linen strips were still wound around his arms, his legs, his torso. His face was covered with a burial cloth. He couldn't see. He could barely move. The wrappings bound his legs together, forcing him to shuffle, to hop, to stumble. But he was moving. He was moving toward the light. The crowd erupted. Not into cheering. Into chaos. Pure, unprocessed, neurological chaos. Because what they were seeing was impossible. Not unlikely. Not improbable. Impossible. As impossible as the sun rising in the west. As impossible as a river flowing uphill. As impossible as a sealed, rotting, 4 days dead body standing up and walking out of a tomb. Some people screamed and fell to the ground. Some turned and ran not from danger, but from a reality their minds couldn't hold. Some stood paralyzed, mouths open, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to process what their eyes were reporting to their brains. And the sound of the crowd was unlike anything you've ever heard. It wasn't one emotion. It was all emotions at once. Terror and joy. Disbelief and faith. Horror and ecstasy. The sound of human beings encountering the raw power of God, unfiltered, undiluted, uncontained. The figure in white reached the entrance. He stood at the threshold, half in darkness, half in light. His bound feet shuffled on the stone. His wrapped arms hung at his sides. His covered face turned blindly toward the world he had left 4 days ago. And Jesus, his voice calm now, quiet, almost gentle after the thunder of the command, said, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Hands. Trembling, shaking, barely functional hands reached for the linen. Someone started unwinding the strips from his arms. Someone knelt and began unwrapping his legs. The cloth was stiff. Dried blood and burial spices had hardened it into a shell. They peeled it away, layer by layer, like cracking open a chrysalis. And then someone reached for the cloth over his face. The final layer. The last veil between the dead man and the living world. They pulled it away. And Lazarus's face emerged. Not a corpse's face. Not a gray, sunken, decomposed mask. A face. His face. Warm. Flushed. Alive. His eyes were open, blinking against the light, the fierce, beautiful, overwhelming light that was everywhere after 4 days of nothing. His lips were parted. He was breathing. Visibly, audibly breathing. His chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a man who was simply, impossibly, completely alive. He looked around. At the sky blue, infinite, achingly beautiful. At the trees green, swaying, alive. At the faces, dozens of faces, all staring, all weeping, all frozen in various stages of astonishment and awe and terror and joy. And then he saw his sisters. Martha standing with her hand over her mouth, her body shaking so violently that someone was holding her upright. Her eyes locked on his face. The face she had washed and anointed 4 days ago. The face she had covered with the burial cloth. That face was looking back at her. And Mary already running, already closing the distance. Already crashing into him before the last linen strip had been removed. Her arms around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder, her body racked with sobs so deep they were silent. Holding him the way she had held him when they were children. The way you hold something you thought you would never touch again. You're here. You're here. You're here. She kept saying it. Into his neck. Into his skin. As if the repetition could make it more real. As if saying it enough times would prevent it from being taken back. And Lazarus held her. With arms that had been bound in grave clothes minutes ago. With hands that had been cold and still and dead. He held his sister and he felt the warmth of her body and the wetness of her tears and the impossible, indescribable miracle of being alive. Martha reached them. She didn't collapse. She didn't run. She walked. Slowly. Deliberately. And she placed her hand on her brother's cheek, the cheek she had washed 4 days ago, the cheek that had been cold under her fingers, and it was warm. Warm. She pulled him into her arms. All three of them, tangled together, weeping, laughing, shaking. A knot of limbs and tears and resurrection. And Jesus, where was Jesus in this moment? He had stepped back. He stood apart from the chaos, from the screaming crowd, from the embracing siblings. He stood in the quiet space that opens up when something sacred has just happened and the world hasn't caught up yet. And I think he smiled. Not the smile of a magician after a trick. Not the smile of a man proving a point. The smile of someone who has just given back something that was stolen. The quiet, deep, satisfied smile of a father watching his children reunite. Because this was never about spectacle. This was never about proving his power to the Pharisees or silencing the skeptics or building his reputation. A family had been torn apart. And he put it back together. And here is what this story says to you. Jesus was deliberately late. He waited 2 days. He let Lazarus die. He let 4 days pass. He let the body decompose. He let the sisters despair. He let the tomb seal. He let everyone arrive at the conclusion, it's over. And then he showed up. Not because he was cruel. Not because he didn't care. But because he wasn't interested in preventing a death. He was interested in defeating death. If he had come on time, Lazarus would have recovered from an illness. Another healing. Another miracle added to the list. Impressive but forgettable. But by waiting, by letting death do its absolute worst, by letting 4 days establish the total, biological, theological certainty that this man was gone forever. Jesus set the stage for something the world had never seen. He didn't push death back. He walked into death's house, kicked down the door, and dragged his friend out by name. And here is the deepest truth. Jesus wept. He wept before the miracle. He wept knowing Lazarus would walk out alive in minutes. He wept with the full knowledge that the ending was already written and the stone was about to move and the grave clothes were about to fall. And this tells you who God is. God does not watch your suffering from a distance. God does not observe your grief with clinical detachment, calculating the right moment for intervention. God enters the grief. God sits in the ashes. God weeps at the grave. Even when the resurrection is 2 minutes away. Even when the solution is already in motion. Even when the ending is certain and glorious and beyond anything you can imagine. God weeps with you first. And then God opens his mouth. And the dead hear their name. And the stones roll away. And the grave clothes fall. And what was lost is found. And what was dead is alive. And what was sealed in darkness walks into the light. The fire has burned down to its last ember. But in Bethany, in a small stone house behind the Mount of Olives, a lamp is burning tonight. Martha is in the kitchen. She is making Lazarus's favorite meal. And for the first time in days, the house smells like bread instead of burial spices. Mary is sitting in the corner, watching her brother eat. She hasn't stopped watching him since he came out. She watches his chest rise and fall. Rise and fall. The most beautiful rhythm in the world. And Lazarus, the man who was dead and is now alive, the man who lay in darkness for 4 days and walked out when a voice called his name, Lazarus is breaking bread. And somewhere outside, in the cool night air, the stone that sealed his tomb lies on its side. Open. Empty. Useless. Because when the author of life speaks, stones don't get a vote. And neither does death.